Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we have Legacy of Destruction fully revealed, so what we need to do at this point in time, as we always do on this channel, is we need to go through, we need to give like a total rating on this set as a whole. Keep in mind these rankings tend to go based off of, meta adjustment, how much this set is actually going to impact certain areas of the meta overall. And yeah, honestly, originally I found myself thinking like that this set was pretty underwhelming, but then when I went back and looked at it, I actually do think there are a good amount of interesting stuff thrown into this set. So we're going to hit it from the same three categories we generally like to hit it from: the brand new archetypes, the legacy support for archetypes that already exist, as well as generic cards that everybody in it who plays competitive basically is going to be interested in picking up. But yeah, let's get into it. Let's start off with the first category here. Of course, we start off with the brand new archetypes. The first one here is obviously Yugi's kind of archetype. Never really been a full-on archetype before, at least not functionally, but they basically made new revamped versions of some of the cards he played in the final duel versus the Pharaoh. And it actually has some cool stuff. I hope it actually gets support. I mean, interestingly enough, this set actually has follow-up support for the cover Yubel cards from the set prior. I really hope they keep that going, because a lot of times I feel underwhelmed with the support in the core set, like cover art archetypes. And so to give like another little thing of follow-up would be awesome for this archetype, because it actually has like some stuff, but it's just not all the way there yet. The only interruption it really sets up is like a spell negate. It does some interesting stuff going second. It's an interesting engine, but it definitely needs more. So that would be awesome to see. But I think it's a cool start, especially if they capitalize on it. If they don't, I'm sure this will get pushed to the wayside and fade away into obscurity. But if they do, it works. But until then, it doesn't really do that much competitively. Next up, you have Raika. This one's probably the biggest one overall. But again, this is another one where I think like probably not there yet. This isn't going to be an archetype that's going to perform too well in the OCG, just because it summons so much. This is like a board spammy archetype that like you keep link climbing over and over again, so you play into Maxi so hard. But it's a pretty cool archetype. It's basically a new like tri-beast kind of archetype, like Tri-Brigade, but it helps insects, plants, and reptiles, which is really cool. But yeah, there's some really powerful cards here. Again, this is an archetype that feels like it's not quite there yet. Really solid first wave. It just feels like next set, if they get like one or two cards and it's like the tying cards that kind of tie everything together, that's going to be what sets this archetype off and let it hit the ground running. So right now, just okay, but it has a lot of potential. And then the next one is Tenpai, or I guess Sangan, I guess. Oh, I guess it depends. They have a couple different names here. Really cool dragon archetype. It's built around the battle phase, but they do have some really powerful engine cards. They've got a Stratos, they've got an E-Telly, they even got a generic Rhoda for any fire dragon. That's like lower level fire dragon, which is cool. And I actually think this one may have the most potential out the gate. I don't know if this archetype's going to get more support later on. I would put my money down that in the long run, Raika's going to end up being better competitively. But I do think the fact that dragons, like Dragon Link, already has such an awesome like core setup that like just any solid new dragon engine can kind of jump right in. And this one is no exception. It could fall right into that archetype and just already start popping off because of how good the Dragon Link core already is. So we'll see. I think this one has some good potential. If they follow up on and give it even more cool stuff, then that's even better. But Dragon Link already has so much, so how much does it really need? But yeah, still good altogether. So honestly, out of all three archetypes combined, the fact that we got three, I would say two have like really good potential, and then one is like, these two right now to me are Bs, because like if they got one more wave that like really pushes them, they could be A's. But this archetype is definitely a C for me. So this one's a C with the potential to be a B if they get more cards, kind of like Yubel did. And these guys kind of have the potential to jump up to B. So I would give it like overall like a 7. I think a 7 is fair enough. 3 new archetypes. 2 of them really have good potential, but they're just not there yet. So I can't put it anywhere closer to an 8 or a 9 out of 10. So I think a 7's pretty fair. All right, moving on to legacy support. Good amount of stuff here, as this is always the biggest category. Start with Melodious stuff. This is honestly the legacy support I'm most excited for. It's a really, really strong. They got like 5 cards and they're all bangers. Literally every single one. They get like 2 main deck monsters, 2 new fusions, and a new fusion spell. They're all really good. This archetype, I think, is a legit rogue deck going forward, which is really exciting because I like the play style. But I think it has potential for sure. But it's rogue at best. It won't be meta with the stuff it has now, but it is still solid. Ancient Gears. Now, I'm a little bit lower on Ancient Gears overall, but part of that's just because it's kind of hard to judge them again. They're kind of like Tenpais in that they're going to be a product of how well they can work with Earth Machine. Earth Machines already have so many good support cards and engines at their disposal that we have to like look at this archetype and how it works with those, not just just in a pure Ancient Gear sense. So I think these cards are fine. I think some of them definitely power creep some of the old Ancient Gear cards, but I still wonder because Ancient Gear still really doesn't have a play going first. So are we still opting second here? And that's always going to be doomed to struggle in the modern day climate. But I do think it actually is okay. I think it's fine. I don't think it's amazing. I think if you're an Ancient Gear player, that's great for you. But I do think overall competitively, it's probably worse than just like straight up Earth Machine. But still like potentially an okay rogue deck. But we'll see. Next up, the Yubel support. This could have arguably been thrown in the generic category, but we got this card and a field spell that searches any fiend that's 0/0. This guy's already a generic fiend support card because he's a good extender for any fiend deck that gives you the potential to really extra spam the board. Really cool cards, honestly, and they help Yubel a ton because now they add to the Yubel deck a way to actually just get into the Unchained lines because they're able to just put enough fiend bodies on the field now, which is actually immensely helpful because now they just get to add like 2 more interruptions to their board that they otherwise weren't able to do before. That's really, really nice. So on top of that, there's a couple of other decks. I already did a video talking about how these could generically be splashed in a couple of different decks. There's a couple other decks that are going to benefit from this. I think this stuff is an A, honestly. I think this stuff is going to come up. We're going to see them somewhere, some way, because they apply generically to fiend decks, and they could lead to something cool and spicy coming out. But we'll see. Next up, Gold Pride. They get a new main deck monster and a new synchro monster. I don't think these cards are inherently bad. I just think they just do more of what Gold Pride already does. I don't think they do anything to really like help the deck with what its biggest weaknesses are. There's still cards that are reliant on your life points being low and all that stuff, so it's just fine. This stuff is so mid to me. I guess if you're a Gold Pride or a Gold Pride Punk player, you may look at these and maybe these are both one-ofs, but at most that's what we're looking at here, in my estimation. Nothing crazy. Next up, we have Valmonica. Valmonica actually gets some pretty good support here overall. Now, I don't think it's going to move the needle for the deck that much. I still think they're like one more wave away. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm totally ready to be proven wrong. This support definitely helps a lot. It's just this deck felt like it needed so much. Now, this is a big step for sure because they get a Stratos monster. They get a really good spell, like its starter/extender card, and then another card that could be part of actually getting their full setup like they want to. So it's cool, but again, like it feels like even when you go full combo in this deck, like the payoff still isn't even that good. It's just fine. So a deck that jumps through hoops just to get a fine outcome doesn't really have too much potential in my eyes. Although the support is about as good as you could have hoped, it still needs one more, unfortunately. Lightsworn. I think this one actually has some pretty good potential for sure. Especially with like Tearlament losing some of the Ishizu cards on the last ban list, people thinking that they might be completely dead. Maybe there's a world where Lightsworns jump in. I don't know. But these cards are pretty strong, from the extra deck monster to the 2 main deck monsters and the trap, like all pretty powerful cards. Overall, I haven't seen this deck too much in action, but in theory, these cards look really strong. And obviously, Lightsworn's working with like any generic graveyard stuff obviously means that they are pretty open-ended there for deck building. So we'll have to see, but pretty good stuff overall. Definitely like an 8 out of 10 probably for this stuff. Memento gets a huge buff here. Huge. They get an awesome fusion spell and they get an awesome fusion monster. Now, the only things I'd really like to see for Memento now is like some sort of alternate win condition. It really feels like the deck has to set up the big dragon guy, and if they can't, if your opponent basically makes their game plan, you can do whatever you want, you can plus out the booty hole, I don't care, but as long as I stop you from putting and keeping the dragon on the field, you can't beat me. And while that's like feels like it's the case for the deck, I feel like it can struggle. So again, I haven't tested it fully, but that's like kind of my impression of the deck so far. And this stuff helps for sure, because these are amazing engine cards. They help so much. They make the engine feel so much smoother. This card's an amazing like card at like getting you a ton of advantage, but it doesn't actually get you, it doesn't give you like an alternate like end board piece. And that's what I feel like the deck would like. If it's going to go that fusion route, maybe we just hope for a new boss monster to be able to like end on, right? Maybe that's what it is. But otherwise, still really good support. Again, kind of like Valmonica. It needed a good bit. This is a great step in the right direction. It still just feels like it needs one more little push, and it could be there. But I like this quite a bit. Centurion gets 3 new cards. These cards are all good. None of them, like, I think maybe the Synchro 12 is, like, really good, and the other 2 are just okay. But I do think in a world where I don't think there's any reason for them to print these cards unless they're going to ban Calamity. So I think they're going to ban Calamity just because of the degeneracy of it, and it's come up multiple times in multiple, like, meta-adjacent decks. And in that world, now I think these cards become really cool and interesting, because then they promote the actual like mid-range kind of like in-between deck that Centurion is supposed to be. Because if you're just making Calamity, your deck is kind of just like a combo deck that's supposed to lock you out of the game, right? Whereas this forces you to, these new cards kind of, if Calamity is banned, kind of push you into a playstyle that's more mid-rangey and fun for everybody. So hopefully that's the case. I think the support's actually pretty good, and hopefully it's a hint at Calamity getting banned. Goblin Bikers, they get a new Exceed, they get a new trap. The Exceed is absolute garbage, which is such a pain because I really like the artwork on it, this big turtle guy. The trap is actually probably pretty good. It may actually be better than the trap we already have that I already thought was okay. But kind of a letdown, to be honest. I was really hoping they'd follow up Goblin Bikers strong, and they did not. So really hoping that the next wave in the next core set is something that brings it home for them. Voiceless Voice get 2 new cards as well. I think they get a new ritual that I think most people say is not very good, and then they get this card, which people said is probably like a definite one of in the deck. I think it's a pretty good follow-up card for them, so that's cool. Diabels, the Original Sin. Some people are terrified of this card. It's kind of like a walking anti-spell fragrance, and it's an illusion, so there are some pretty easy ways to get access to this card. There's a new trap that just summons it straight from the deck, so when you go first, it's a scary option. But I do think that's one of the biggest flaws with it, is that it's a card that, like, going first is great. Obviously, it's pretty strong. A lot of decks have quick play spells, or even forcing your opponent to set cards before they activate them means that if you end on a board that just has a good amount of removal, you can just, like, they set a spell that's like a spell starter. Like, imagine your opponent setting Pot of Prosperity, and then you just go, like, effect a pop. And then they just, like, never get to use the Prosperity. And if you have multiple removals like that, they just end up setting all their starter spells, and you just go pop, 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 remove them all, and they never get to fire them. Now, they can play into that and bait some stuff for sure, but if you have enough pops, there's no way to play around it at the end of the day. So, still a scary card. I don't know how to feel about it. It's the kind of card where, like, in the right format, if there are decks that are really abusing it, I could see it actually being ban-worthy potentially because of that anti-spell-esque potential, but I do think it's a pretty play-aroundable card. I think most people can play around this card more than they can with anti-spell. But we'll see. All right, Kiklos, the Circular Fairy. Cool card. Honestly, just a pretty good generic plant/insect card. He lets you search any insect or plant tuner, and then he even has a way to reborn himself later on. Cool card. Honestly, just in a vacuum, like a decent card. Maybe he'll come up down the line. Fishfork Harpooner, generic water extender card. Pretty decent, but you do kind of have to go neg 1 to use him. Blink Out, really cool quick play spell that targets a linked monster on the field. It returns it to the extra deck. Then you can special summon one of the materials used for its link summon from your graveyard, which means if either your opponent used one of your monsters to make like an SP, like take something with a steal spell, like tactics or talents, and then use it, you could return their monster and then summon your guy. There's also cool play with some of certain Link decks where you can summon your own guys back to like dodge certain things or get extra interruption. It's an interesting card for sure. Could come up in like Link heavy formats. This guy, Valdrath, this card's the best rank 10 that's ever been made. It's like an Omni Negate, it gets extra pops. It's a pretty powerful card for sure. Now there's not a ton of decks that like abuse 10s, and there's not a ton of generic engines that make like rank 10s, because that's 2 10s on the field. It's kind of asking a lot of investment. But if we get an engine down the line, like think about Horus, right? Think about what Horus has done to make rank 8s so much more abusable in so many decks. Imagine if we got like a 10 engine like that. Like this card becomes like the first card on the list you need to play. So keep it in mind. Definitely scary generic card. Nightmare Apprentice. This card's crazy. If this card existed for like so many types, like decks would be broken right now. This card can summon itself by hand by discarding any card, just like the Yubel Star. And then if normal or special, you can just add any illusion monster from deck to hand. So it is a very, very easy extender that then also searches any card in the entire illusion type. So now that they've made this card and they've actually made a really insane illusion support card, they need to be very careful on the type of illusion cards they print going forward. Whether it's a new archetype, whether it's another generic card, whatever, this card's crazy. So keep an eye on this. Right now, this basically just benefits like the Chimera deck, basically, but it could come up in other decks too down the line. And the last card here is Metaltronius. Really cool quick play spell. To me, this card is like side deck only. I really couldn't see too many instances aside from like a tier 0 format where a card like this would be mainable. But it's a very like mirror match, like punishy card. So it's a cool card for like side deck purposes, especially in like maybe even next format where like we're going to see Snake Eye in like so many different decks. This could be a really cool card. But unfortunately, this is coming the format after, so we'll see if that stuff is still going strong. But still a cool card nonetheless. This is probably the generic chase card of the set, I would have to say overall. But again, it's not a pot of prosperity. It's not a everybody's got to have it card. This is more in the lines of something like Cross Out that still doesn't even see that much play anymore. But yeah, so for the generic cards, like considering there's nothing super high end, but there's a couple of cool cards, I would give it like a 6 out of 10. Honestly, a little like pretty underwhelming for those, but I would give the support honestly like another 7 out of 10. So overall, you know, 20 out of 30, you know, a nice like 2/3 of like how good the set could be. Not insane, not terrible. I honestly almost was going to think that the set was terrible as we were coming along, like down the final stretch. But honestly, when I looked back at it, I was kind of impressed overall. But those are my thoughts overall, guys. Thank you so much for watching, as always. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.